I'm going to start with Rocket Away. I went over this last time, and I believe I went over it the time before a little bit, focusing, you know what, in my window, and I'm sorry, like, it's not that I'm distracted, my window looks like it's hitting all these keys. But usually it has to be turned more to do that. So I can't figure out why that would be. It looks to me like maybe something's wrong even though the window looks right. Okay. That looks good. Maybe it's just because the other window was so darn tiny I couldn't tell. Alrighty, so Rocket Away. When I introduced this last time, I mentioned it's kind of a break. It's an easier song to play. There's no eighth notes, no tricky rhythms. What is new is the B flat. So I don't think I said much about that last time. I believe the time before I talked about the top. Let's just look at flats and sharps a little bit. You've had sharps a couple times. If we take any, excuse me, and I always have to say before I start talking about them, we have to qualify that for now we're really talking about, we're focused on the white notes, and when we talk about a sharp or a flat, we're going away from a white note. And the reason I say that is because there's actually, as you get into it deeper, you find that there are other things. It still follows the rule, but it might take more thinking, and I don't want to go ahead of where we need to be. So if I play a white note, let's say I play a D, and you should be able to see this. I don't know if you can see it, but this should show here. If I go to a D sharp, sharp is going up. On piano, up is to the right. So I'm going up to that black note. That's a D sharp. We had this. And if you ever play, that's a D sharp. So what about flats? We start from our white note and we go down a half step, and that's to the left. So if I start with this D and go down a half step, I get D flat. They're still touching. They're right next to each other. Let's go back to the E though. What if I do E flat? And I go down to the left. That's an E flat. But, and I don't believe you can see this, I'm pretty sure you cannot, but if you could see this, and when you get the overhead video, D sharp and E flat on the piano are the same note. There's a word for this, it's enharmonic. That word is a word that's used when two things are written different, but they sound the same. It's the same thing. On piano, it's the precise exact note. If you played, well, a good example is strings, but wind instruments, you actually can nuance the note a little bit and make a slight difference. That's something I've never done myself, but I know that string players, I believe they play sharps a little bit sharper and flats a little bit flatter. I might have gotten that reversed though. But we're not doing that. We're doing piano, so we can say it's the same note because for us it is. So going to the B. If it's a B flat, we have to go to the left, which is down, and we get this note B flat. That is what's being covered at the top of this page. So they've got a chart there. There's the 3 black notes. The top one's B flat. But I'm going to show you something, and if this seems confusing, don't even worry about it. Let's look at that B flat. What if we were on an A and we were asked to play an A sharp? We would go to the right. A sharp is the same note as B flat. They're enharmonically the same. You won't have this kind of, it can be confusing for people, even people that have played quite a while, until you really get it. So don't worry about that if that's confusing. But for some of you that might have had a little theory, or maybe you were playing a song and you saw it, there's also signs called double sharps and double flats, but they're way down the road for you. but they would do the same thing. A double sharp, you would go up the half step and then you go up again the half step. So that's enough of this for now. So I had focused on the first 2 lines of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play them through just once. I'm going to skip 3 because that's the same as 1, and then I'll work a little bit on line 4. So here's line 1. B flat. Line 2, we're going to use the rule. The rule that is in the upper right-hand corner when a flat appears before a note. It applies to that note for the rest of the measure. So in line 2, we're going to have measure 3 where we have the B flat twice because of the rule. This is marked flat, and this is flat. You go back to the B flat because of the rule. This is a standard rule. This is not just piano. This is just music notation. This is how it goes. If the composer or arranger, the person who took an old song and arranged it into music, if they wanted a plain old B, they would put a natural. And I cannot recall. I think naturals are introduced, let me think, page 108. So page 108 in a pink box introduces that sign, which cancels a sharp or a flat, but we haven't had it yet. So just be aware there is a way to cancel it. If we look at the last line, let's just look at the right hand. It starts the same. We've got the B flat. So the last 2 measures are different. First 2 measures are just like lines 1 and 2. Sorry about that. Now, one thing that's different in these last 2 measures is the left hand moves in half notes. The whole song, the left hand is not only in whole notes, but most of those they're tied. So the left hand just holds. But at the end, the left hand's going to move. So that's where I'm going to stop with this song, and I'm going to put this into perspective for you with what you should be doing. You have to, just like you have to look at how much work you have for all your classes, you don't want to put all your energy into one class, you have to divide up your energy. If we just look at piano, you want to divide up your energy in a way that you learn as much as you can while not spending too much time on things that aren't as important, especially if you have other classes that are difficult. So my suggestion to you is if you feel like it's a little hard to do everything, go over this, focus on the right hand, maybe just focus on 2 lines. With most of the songs we do, if you do 2 lines, you will get a majority of the benefit. It's sort of like that 80-20 rule. You get most of the benefit from like a small amount. And then, yes, you can do more, but it's a lot work to do more, and maybe you don't get a whole lot more benefit. So I would suggest, first of all, do right hand, especially 2 lines. And then if you have time, put the 2 lines together. If you do that, you will have enough out of this that you could later on go back and finish it. So we're moving on. Oh, let me mention 97 is a writing page. If this is new to you, it might help you to write. It might help you to go through this. If it's not new to you, you probably don't need it. Page 98 goes over half steps. When I was talking about D, D sharp, E, E flat, that's what I was going over. If you look at page 98, there's charts and graphics. It explains what a whole step and a half step is. So let's talk about that. Half step is the closest they can be. B down to B flat is a half step. By the way, a half step can go up or down. So what if I go down a whole step from B? That's a half. That's a half. The whole step is B down to A. It's 2 half steps. So that's explained here. There's something else explained here that is not the way I teach scales. It's something I didn't even know about till I was in college, and I didn't even learn it in college. I learned it in college. I started teaching piano when I was 18 because everybody just asked me to teach them. And I went to music school, but I didn't go to music school till I was, I think, 20 because I was in art school. But at the time, I was using books at the studio where I was teaching, and I read about tetrachords. I had never heard of them. I don't know. Tetra, I'm guessing, means 4. I am not 100% sure. And chord never made sense to me. However, it's a system that's used sometimes. Basically, if you look at the bottom of page 98, they explain it. They call the 4 notes going up. This is starting on middle C and going up by step on the white notes. They call that the lower tetrachord, and then you put your thumb next to it, and they call that the upper tetrachord. I started piano when I was maybe 6, and my teacher never mentioned it. So I kind of think it's just something that is a slightly different way of looking at things. But there is one unique thing about this that's kind of interesting, and I'm not going to really talk about it because I don't know enough about it. But I have read, and when I read it, it made sense. If you think in terms of these groups of 4, you actually can use it in a way to help you work your way around the different keys. We're not doing that in this class, so it's not really something that I feel that attached to. It's in the book, so I feel like I have to mention it. My suggestion is read it. If it makes sense to you, if you try it and it makes sense, do it. If it doesn't make sense to you, I'm going to explain to you just right now how I learned about scales. I learned there's a formula. And of course, when you start piano, you generally start on middle C. When you're a kid, that's just what everybody does. The formula is whole. That means whole step, but you just say whole. And in books, it'll be a W. W for whole, H for half. So you go a whole step, which is C to D. You go up another whole step to E. Then there's a half step to F. So the formula is whole, whole, half. Now we're on the F, or the fourth scale degree. We go whole, 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 and there's one more whole, and then a half. So it's whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's how I learned. For you, go over this. It's not something I'm going to test you on. The thing that I think is more important here is the way you move your hands to gain extra notes. I mentioned this, I believe, the last video, page 100. It talks about the major scale. And it actually, the formula I just gave you is written there. They kind of talk about it as tetrachords and that formula. So that gives you your choice as to how to think about this. And if you're confused, you can either ask me, I can try to explain, but honestly, you don't need to know this to do the material. What's important here is in the middle of page 100, these basic exploratory exercises or beginning technical exercises where you do a small group of notes, and I'm going to hold my hand out. Okay, so I'm wiggling my thumb, my 2, my 3, then my thumb moves. The thumb works completely different. All your fingers go up and down, but your thumb goes sideways. So it's a technique of how we get our thumb to pass under the hand, or then it's not really the opposite, but it's kind of the opposite motion where the hand moves over the thumb. That's what this explores, demonstrates. You go 1, 2, 3, and then your thumb goes under, then back down. The left hand is going to start on C. It's going to walk down. Then the thumb is going to go under. You should be able to see that more when you get the overhead. That's what this is about. And there's a fly in here. I don't think you guys can see him, but he's everywhere. So we are going to skip over. Page 101 is talking about writing the major scale. You are welcome to do that. That's not something it's a theory thing. And if you take piano over a period of time, it's something you work on. but I'm more focused on getting you to play the songs and to understand enough to play the songs. Page 102 explains a little bit more about the exercises in the thumb. If you feel comfortable, if you've got time, take a look at that. Don't worry about it. I swear that fly is on my phone. You know what? Oh, this is horrible. You're going to see him when you get that video because he keeps landing on my... Go away. I'm going to do 2 more things, and I don't know what time it is because I'm not able to see a clock, but I'm going to briefly introduce Joy to the World. It's not a song I teach, but I often go over it maybe once, and the reason I do that is not really so much to teach the song, but to show that a song can use a scale. So I don't know how many of you know the song, but here is the melody in the left hand. In this book, they shift it to the right hand. Then the right hand plays. So if you do know that song, and if you've never thought about it, that song really, the melody is predominantly a scale until the end part. So that's something, if you have time, take a look. If not, don't worry. So the last thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about page 104 and 105. 104 is a little more information about chords. It's explaining root, third, fifth. In the piano classes, when we start with chords, we almost do it as you're given something and you memorize it. You memorize how your hand is shaped, and you do that as a physical memory, along with that intellectual memory as I am now playing the G chord or I am playing the G7. This is a little bit more of the theory. It shows how you can build a triad. Tri means 3. A triad is a 3-note chord, and you can build one on every note of the scale. And as an aside, you can build one on every single note of the piano. Black notes, white notes, it doesn't matter. But we're starting with the white notes. So there's some information there to help you understand that. It explains how, if it's a triad in root position, and root means the name of the chord is the bottom or lowest note, and on piano that means to the left. It's the one that probably your pinky's on in the left hand or your thumb in the right hand. It's the lowest on the piano, the most leftmost note. And it's going to be either line, 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 or space, 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 because it skips of a third. So you can look at that and read. I'm just going to play a little bit of the right hand. I'm starting with a blocked C chord, which you know. Now what I'm doing is I'm stepping every finger over. I'm just shaping my hand and just moving to the right, moving to the right, moving to the right, and it continues that way. And what's interesting is some of those chords will be major and some will be minor, and there's one that's going to be different. It's going to be a little bit of an oddball. It's called diminished. The reason is because as we go to different white notes, we have different numbers of half steps between the pitches. So generally in the Piano 2 or the 290 class, with page 105, I usually do half. That's what I do when we get to the point that there's like a few more songs than we can do. I like to cover parts of them. Then if the class allows, if there's time, we can do some more if there's an interest. And sometimes maybe there's 3 songs and I ask people to vote. I play them and I ask people to vote. So the reason I only do half is because you get most of it in that half. The purpose of this song, Cockles and Mussels, it's an old folk song. I learned it when I was a kid. It was just one of those things. Back when I was young, I don't know if it's the case anymore, but there was a lot of singing. I was in Girl Scouts. I was in little church groups and family reunions, and my grandfather was a minister. So I was in different groups that sung. Back then we didn't have CDs. We didn't have a lot of stuff. When I was a kid, we had a black and white TV, this big, and it had like 3 channels, 3, 6, and 10. That was it. So before people had everything to do, there was no internet. Before people had so much to do, people sang more, which is kind of cool. So I grew up singing all these little songs, and this is one of them. It's a really kooky kind of song, but that's just what a lot of songs are. Now, the point here is that instead of your left hand playing chords you already know, you're going to use this new chord format. You're just going to move your hand up and move your hand up. So I'm going to play 2 lines for you. I don't know if any of you have heard that or not, but it is a well-known song, but probably among the older crew. So if we look at how to play that, the melody is mostly in the right hand. However, excuse me, 2 times in the song, the left hand thumb is going to play the melody tone. Then you have to pick it up to play a chord. We did that in Alouetta when we did that little review. So getting to this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the melody of the first line, then the melody of the second line. In the first line, I'm going to start with that left hand tone. And we have the dotted rhythm. That's the exact same rhythm we had in these other songs we've looked at. Michael Row the Boat Ashore, London Bridge, Below the Man Down. As you keep seeing this rhythm in different songs, different pieces, at some point you'll internalize this. And you'll look at that and you won't have to worry or think. If I put it with the left hand, I'm just going to point out the left hand ties most of the time, and there is a little rest there. So the last line's a little bit different. I'm not going to worry about that now. If anybody's working on this and wants to finish it and wants to see more, let me know. I could always do it next class, or we'll figure something out. But I don't know if everyone's going to want to do this. So my main thing is I want you to start it. I want you to try that. So that covers everything I wanted to do. Last class, at the very end, and really just because of the incident with the apple slices, when I cut that 1/4 into 8ths, my knife just didn't get quite in the middle, and it was uneven, and that made me think, well, that's like a swing feel. Last class, at the very end, I played a little bit of Got Those Blues. Usually people enjoy this. So I'm not going to actually start it except for a teensy little bit in case you want to get started. But I will start this again, probably maybe next class or the class after. That's going to depend on how many of the assignments I get back. But if we look at just the right hand, we start with a 6 and we have its staccato. It's lifted because you have to repeat. That's your first pattern, and that repeats. The next measure takes part of that measure, half of that measure, and repeats that. This is measure 3. The measure after that's got a B flat, and that sometimes is a little confusing, so I'm not even going to do that. But the point is, the whole first line in the right hand, it's kind of the same stuff that repeats. And if you put that together, the left hand is just C chords. Here's the measure that's a little harder. Okay, I'm going to sign off here.